May 20th, 2019. The video you're about to watch is a great example of how bad our corporate media and our corporate news has gotten. All weekend long, I saw story after story about the Republican congressman, the first Republican congressman to call for President Trump's impeachment over the Mueller report. In the last 2 hours, I learned information about this Republican congressman, and I'm sure you'll find it interesting. This just further proves how bad things are in the United States when the media doesn't give you the facts you need to be informed.
This is kind of how I think the rest of this election cycle is going to play out, not just in third, but elsewhere. This whole dust-up started when Democrat Pat Miles aired a commercial. That commercial said Republican Justin Amash was part owner of a manufacturing company in China.
Good evening. I'm Elaine Quijano. It's a first for Republicans. Michigan Congressman Justin Amash is calling for Congress to move against President Trump, accusing him of obstructing justice. Amash wants him impeached, joining a chorus of Democrats demanding the same. As for Mr. Trump, he noticed and fired back. Weijia Jiang is at the White House.
In more than a dozen tweets, Congressman Justin Amash made his case that the Mueller report shows President Trump has engaged in impeachable conduct, and it includes multiple examples of conduct satisfying all the elements of obstruction of justice. Attorney General William Barr drew the opposite conclusion.
The evidence developed by the special counsel is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense.
Amash said Barr has deliberately misrepresented Mueller's report. President Trump accused Amash of having an ulterior motive, getting his name out there through controversy. He also tweeted, defending himself, no collusion and ultimately no obstruction, adding Justin is a loser who sadly plays right into our opponent's hands.
It's very disturbing. This is exactly what you would expect from Justin. He never supported the president, and I think he's just looking for attention.
For the most part, Republicans have unified around the president.
And the special counsel's finding is clear. Case closed.
And Democratic leaders are hesitant to call for impeachment, arguing there's no chance it would pass the GOP-controlled Senate.
So, Trump, let's listen in.
The economy is doing very well by every measure. We're having probably the greatest economy that we've had anywhere, anytime in the history of our country. We're having a little squabble with China because we've been treated very unfairly for many, many decades, for actually a long time. And it should have been handled a long time ago, and it wasn't, and we'll handle it now. I think it's going to turn out extremely well. We're in a very strong position. The relationship I have with President Xi is extraordinary. It's really very good, but he's for China and I'm for the USA, and it's very simple. We are, again, in a very, very strong position. If they want to make a deal, it could absolutely happen. But in the meantime, a lot of money is being made by the United States.
Well, how much money are we bringing in each year with these new tariffs we've put on Chinese products? I went to Google, I typed in sources of United States federal government revenue 2015. This is one of the first graphs that returned, and it shows something very simple. We collected, they're called customs duties, that's an import tariff. We collected $36 billion of custom duties in the year 2015. This is at a period of time when we were not taxing Chinese imports hardly at all. Roosevelt 2019 is a big supporter of Tulsi Gabbard for president and also a fan of Bernie Sanders. But about 20% of the time, President Trump is right, and he's right in this case. I'm an economist. If we increase tariffs from 10 to 25% on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods, This will bring in an extra $30 billion a year of tariff revenue, on top of the $36 billion a year we're currently bringing in, given the previous information from 2015. Total tariff revenue for this coming year will rise to between $66 billion or maybe just a little bit more than that. That's a lot of money. Free college for everybody in the country going to a public school is $65 billion. President Trump says we're going to win this trade war. The Chinese have stopped buying American agricultural products and our farmers are suffering. President Trump wants to help them. He announced in two different messages he wants to give about $27 billion of the Chinese tariff money to the farmers who are suffering in the trade war. Well, that's $12,300 per farm. $27 billion divided by the 2.2 million farms, that's USDA data from 2007, equals $12,300 per farm. The same day trade talks break off between China and the United States, the first Republican congressman calls for Trump's impeachment, and it's a Republican congressman who owns a manufacturing plant in China, and none of the mainstream media covers this story on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and I learn about it on Monday after I get done teaching my high school class. Nice.
Is right. The men running for the 3rd Congressional District covering Kent, Ionia, and Berry counties for the congressional seat cannot agree on a TV commercial that is airing right now.
24-Hour News 8's political reporter Rick Albin tracked down the players involved here. This is tantalizing.
Yeah, this is kind of how I think the rest of this election cycle is going to play out, not just in 3rd, but elsewhere. This whole dust-up started when Democrat Pat Miles aired a commercial. That commercial said Republican Justin Amash was part owner of a manufacturing company in China, and that is a charge that Amash strongly denies.
Justin co-owns a factory in China that manufactures the tools he sells in America.
That ad drew a quick and strongly worded response from Amash to Miles that said, in part, "My family and I have no ownership in any factory in China and never have," which prompted Miles to hold a media availability to counter that claim.
We relied on information provided by the company itself.
Apparently, a Google search turned up a website with the name of the company Miles claims Amash has ownership in. And it says that Dynamic Source International is a manufacturer. In fact, we did a search and found any number of sites that would appear to support that claim. But there's a problem with all of that, according to Amash, and that is where this whole dispute gets complicated. That this is a website for Dynamic Source International. It lists a lot of addresses and a lot of information on here, but you say this is not the company's website.
This is not the company's website. The company doesn't have a website, and we've explained this to Mr. Miles repeatedly.
It turns out that Amash does have partial ownership of a business in China, but he claims it is not a manufacturing company and that none of these are its website. In fact, he says it doesn't even have a website. And further, Amash is steadfast that the ad in question is false.
The fact that he continues to run the commercial after we've explained this to him and made it very clear indicates a problem with the way he's trying to run this campaign.
Earlier in the week, his Democratic opponent, Pat Miles, weighed in on that accusation.
So for them to claim that I'm making these facts up is ridiculous and outrageous.
Amash's family business, from which he also receives a small salary, does contract for tools to be made in China and elsewhere, then imports and sells in the United States. He is adamant, however, that Dynamic Source International, that's the company which he has ownership in, does not do manufacturing. A distinction, he says, renders the Miles ad false. Now, you obviously heard what Miles had to say about that. This race is likely to get more contentious in the next 32 days. This whole thing is about to heat up, not just in the 3rd, but watch a lot of these races.
Yep.